Okay, thank you. How are you? Nice live shot. Good to see all of you. Happy Friday. It's great to be back with you. I want to provide an update on President Trump's actions in the wake of the catastrophic air collision that tragically claimed the lives of 67 people at Reagan National Airport on Wednesday night. Everyone in this White House continues to mourn the victims and keep their friends and families in our thoughts and prayers during this unimaginable time. First, within moments of the collision, the president and his newly appointed team were in immediate communication. The president was briefed on Wednesday evening following the crash, again on Thursday morning, and he has continued to receive updates as recovery efforts continue on the ground. The president, as you know, took time to address the nation yesterday afternoon. To deliver accountability, President Trump swiftly signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and policy aviation safety standards. The memorandum directs the Secretary of Transportation and the FAA Administrator to immediately review all hiring decisions and changes to safety protocols made during the prior 4 years, and to take all necessary corrective actions to achieve uncompromised aviation safety. The review will include a comprehensive assessment and reversal of any deterioration in hiring standards and aviation safety standards and protocols during the previous administration. Aviation safety was addressed by President Trump before this tragic collision even took place. On his second day in office, the president signed a memorandum to immediately stop Biden DEI hiring programs and return to non-discriminatory, merit-based hiring. And in 2018, during President Trump's first term, the Department of Transportation announced it would put an end at that time to use the biological questionnaire that was introduced by the Obama administration, which punished skilled applicants. President Trump has long led on the issue of aviation safety, and he will continue to do so. He will continue to deliver on the promises he made to the American people at record speed. The Senate has already confirmed 8 of President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees, including most recently Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, as you of course know, EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin, and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who is scheduled to be sworn in later today. We expect the Senate to continue quickly confirming the remainder of President Trump's well-qualified nominees in the days ahead. Earlier this week in the East Room, the president proudly signed the Laken-Riley Act into law, surrounded by Laken's loving parents and sister. This common-sense bipartisan law mandates the federal detention of illegal aliens who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury, like the animal who murdered Laken Riley in cold blood. This was the first piece of legislation President Trump proudly signed as the 47th President of the United States, and it will guarantee that Laken did not die in vain. As Laken's mother, Allison, tearfully said during the signing event, President Trump said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken, and he hasn't. He's a man of his word, and we trust that he will fight for the American people. Those are the words of Laken's mother, and we will never forget them. So to help lock up even more criminal illegal aliens, President Trump signed a memorandum this week to detain them at Guantanamo Bay. This action will expand the Migrant Operations Center at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to full capacity to provide critical extra detention space for high-priority criminal illegals. Our brave ICE agents continue to arrest more and more of these types of individuals every day in communities across our country. And I have more updates for you. On January 27, 2025, ICE Chicago arrested a citizen of Guatemala who has been convicted of solicitation to meet a child, disturbing, and sentenced to 24 months probation. On January 28, 2025, ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of South Korea who has been convicted of 9 counts of possession or control of material depicting minors in sexually explicit conduct. On January 28th, ICE New York arrested a Mexican national previously charged by the state of New York for attempted murder and possession of a weapon and assault. And on January 28th, ICE Philly arrested a citizen of Mexico who has been convicted of possession of child pornography. Our message is simple. If you are a criminal, illegal alien, you will be arrested and deported. On another important matter, the nation's report card was released this week, and the news is not good. It showed that U.S. students had record low reading comprehension scores last year. It's National School Choice Week, and in part of the president's commitment to education, he just left a roundtable in the Roosevelt Room focused on this issue with leaders from across the country. The national report card showed that 70% of 8th graders were below proficient in reading, and 40% of 4th graders did not even meet the basic reading levels. This is completely unacceptable to the president, and he continues to take aggressive actions to address this education problem in our country. He signed an executive order this week prohibiting federal funding of the indoctrination of our children, including radical gender ideology and critical race theory in the classroom. The president believes American education should focus on cultivating patriotic citizens who are ready for the workforce. And this action will help get schools back on track and defend fundamental parental rights in education. The president also signed a school choice executive order expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families. And in lighter news, but in exciting news, after announcing our briefing room changes on Wednesday, this White House has received more than 10,000 submissions from individuals across the country who are eager to join all of you. We might have to make this room a little bit bigger to do that, who want to participate in our new media seat at a future briefing. So in this seat today, we have the Ruthless podcast. They humbly started by entertaining small audiences on Capitol Hill, but after 4 years, this program has become one of the most influential podcasts in America. They previously reached #1 on the charts and earned over 25 million downloads as they deliver political news with a humorous touch. The hosts are Josh Holmes, Michael Duncan, Comfortably Smug, and the man joining us today, John Ashbrook. So with that, I will take your questions. John, please kick us off.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Karoline, in your first briefing, the media went after this administration for deporting illegal immigrants they claimed were not criminals.
That's
My
right.
question is, do you think they're out of touch with Americans demanding action on our border crisis?
The media out of touch? I think that media certainly is out of touch, and I think that's proven by a number of things, John. Number one, there was a New York Times poll that was released prior to President Trump's inauguration by the New York Times, which of course is a legacy media outlet, that showed that 83% of Americans support deporting the individuals that you mentioned, illegal immigrant criminals, especially those who have committed heinous crimes in the interior of our country. And I received a very actually interesting statistic on this front from ICE this week. 97% of the deportations that this administration has made thus far are of individuals who had a removal order from the previous administration, but were never removed from the interior of our country. So this shows that the previous administration was actually defying our laws, and all this administration is doing is simply following the laws, the immigration laws of this great country. Thanks for the question, John. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Peter.
Thanks, Caroline. If President Trump is telling us that air traffic control towers are staffed with unqualified controllers, these DEI hires who never should have been brought on, then it's not safe to fly commercially, is it?
Mm-hmm. The president was asked and answered this yesterday, and he believes that it is still indeed safe, and Americans should feel safe traveling our skies. With that said, two things can be true at the same time, and we certainly have seen the deterioration of federal hiring standards at the Federal Aviation Administration, and the president wants to increase those standards. He wants pilots in this country who have the great responsibility of flying American citizens by the tens of millions every single day to be chosen for that position based on their merit and their skills. And so the administration will continue to prioritize this.
Was the air traffic controller in the DCA tower on Wednesday night hired or not fired at some point because of his or her race?
That investigation is ongoing, and so when we have updates on the exact individuals who were involved in the collision, including the air traffic controller, also the pilots of the helicopter and others, we will confirm those. I don't want to confirm names from this podium today. We're not in a position to do that. But I will say the president has still rightfully pointed out that there has been problems with the aviation industry over the past several years. And this started under Barack Obama in 2014.
And when the president says on Truth Social, the Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high by a lot, it was far above the 200-foot limit, that's not really too complicated to understand, is it? Is he suggesting a helicopter malfunction or a crew error or a crew doing this intentionally?
No, the president is simply stating what he said in that Truth Social post, which is that the helicopter was flying higher than it should have been, which is one of the reasons that led to this collision. And the other reasons for that are still being investigated, and I will let that investigation play out. Kelly.
Some of our colleagues have obtained a memo from the Defense Intelligence Agency that talks about not holding any activities or programming related to Black History Month to be in line with the president's views on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Does the president plan to have a proclamation about Black History Month? In his first term, each of the 4 years of his term, he did so and called on those in government to have programming activities and celebrations. Is he going to do that this year?
Yeah, the president looks forward to signing a proclamation celebrating Black History Month. I actually spoke with our great staff secretary. It's in the works of being approved, and it's going to be ready for the president's signature to signify the beginning of that tomorrow.
If an agency is calling off those kinds of activities in an attempt to be in alignment with the president's views on DEI and other things, should they adjust that now and have those programs and make those celebrations however they see fit in the office?
The president is leading here at the White House, and I'll leave it to the proclamation that he will sign very soon. Mary, great to see you.
Thanks for having us. So I wanted to follow up on the gender executive orders you mentioned. First of all, we know that President Trump has taken a bunch of steps to protect children from irreversible transgender procedures. Is he interested in backing congressional legislation on this point? And does the Trump administration have interest in investigating doctors who perform these irreversible procedures on kids, such as a double mastectomy on a minor girl?
Well, the president has already taken a very strong stance on this issue this week with the signing of his executive order, a few executive orders in this space. First, he made it the official policy of the federal government that there are only two sexes, male and female, and we have directed all federal agencies to comply with that policy. As for congressional legislation to support the president's agenda in this space, and certainly ending the mutilation of young children, the chemical castration of young children, which is a barbaric practice that the vast majority of Americans do not support for young minor children. Certainly the president would support Congress's efforts, as he has already made that very clear this week. Jennifer.
On Rick Grinnell's trip to Venezuela to meet with Nicolas Maduro, is there anything you can share on timing on that, what his agenda is, what the mission of that trip is?
Yes, so I can confirm that Rick Grinnell is in Venezuela today. I can confirm that Rick Grinnell is going to Venezuela, or is in Venezuela, with two immediate directives from the President of the United States. Number one, Rick Grinnell has been instructed to identify a place and ensure that repatriation flights of Tren de Aragua members, Venezuelan nationals who have broken our nation's laws, will land in Venezuela. As I said at this podium a few days ago, we expect every nation on this planet to cooperate with the repatriation of our citizens, and so Rick Grinnell is in Venezuela to ensure that can continue. And number two, Rick Grinnell is in Venezuela to ensure that all U.S. detainees in Venezuela are returned home. That's his mission, and I will provide a readout after this trip.
On Bob Menendez, can you tell us if anyone has approached the White House or the president about a pardon or a commutation?
I have not been part of those discussions. If they have, I am not sure if they have, but I won't speculate on potential pardons that may or may not happen. To my awareness, the answer is no. Justin.
Hey, friends at Reuters are reporting that the president has made a decision on the Canada and Mexico tariffs, but that they won't actually be implemented until March 1st. I was wondering if you could confirm that and talk through some of the president's thinking.
I saw that report, and it is false. I was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago, continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
The president yesterday said that last night he was planning to discuss whether an exemption would be made on oil imports. Do you have any information on what decision he made there, or will there be exemptions at all offered under this?
I don't have an update or readout for you on the exemptions, but those tariffs will be for public consumption in about 24 hours tomorrow, so you can read them then.
Karoline.
Stephen Nelson.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I have 3 questions, if that's all right. I'd like to ask you about press freedom and then about 2 economic matters.
Sure.
On press freedom, on Tuesday you announced plans to roll back the more restrictive press badge policy of the Biden White House. But there's a different anti-press freedom policy I wanted to ask about. The Biden White House adopted a mysterious pre-screening process for journalists allowed into large event spaces that in the pre-pandemic days of the first Trump term were open to all journalists on campus. This effectively limited the diversity of reporters present and blocked the asking of questions that large segments of the American public wanted answered. As press secretary, can you commit to abolishing this mysterious pre-screening process?
There were a lot of mysterious processes that my team and I have had to unravel over the past 2 weeks that were implemented by the previous White House and in particular the previous press shop here. And so I can commit to a greater access and transparency, which I believe we already have by ensuring that the 440 journalists whose credentials were revoked will be reinstalled. They will get their credentials if they wish to. We've also, of course, opened up a new seat to new media. And as far as open press events here at the White House, if we tell you it's open press, it's open press.
So just to confirm, this pre-screening thing is something you're aware of and you'll work to undo to the maximum extent possible.
When we say something is open press, it will mean it's open press.
These are economic matters, and I can just ask them both at once for
Sure.
you. In New York City, Governor Hochul's congestion pricing went into effect this month. Vehicles that drive through parts of Manhattan have to pay a $9 toll. President Trump has made clear his opposition. He said that it's, quote, the most progressive tax known to womankind. Will the administration be trying to block this? And the second question is, millions and maybe tens of millions of Americans who voted for President Trump were excited about his plans to do away with taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits. But there's uncertainty about the timing of this. So can you clarify for them when this is going to happen? And does President Trump want this to be in the first, all 3 of those in the first batch of legislation early this year?
Well, to answer your question in one swoop, I will say that President Trump is committed to lowering taxes for Americans, cutting taxes for Americans. As for congestion pricing in New York, I do know that the president spoke with Governor Hochul about that. I don't have any, actions, so to speak, to read out for you on that issue today. Number 2, when it comes to no taxes on tips and Social Security, the president has made it very clear to our allies on Capitol Hill that is a critical piece of this reconciliation package, and he expects that his tax cuts from 2017, which put a lot more money back into the American people's pockets, those must be implemented, and no tax on tips. The president is intent on delivering on that promise, and he will get it done.
And overtime also as part of reconciliation?
Yes. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. Can you guarantee that those tariffs won't increase prices for Americans, including at the gas pump and the grocery store?
I think Americans who are concerned about increased prices should look at what President Trump did in his first term. He effectively implemented tariffs, and the average inflation rate during the first Trump administration was 1.9%. In fact, when President Trump left office, it was 1.4%. So President Trump is going to do everything he possibly can to cut the inflation crisis that the previous administration imposed on the American people, and he will continue to effectively utilize tariffs.
If those tariffs do increase prices for Americans, will the administration reverse them?
That's a hypothetical question, and the president is intent on ensuring that he effectively implements tariffs while cutting inflation and costs for the American people. And, the media has this way of just looking at everything in a microscope rather than looking at the whole of government economic approach that this president is taking. He will effectively implement tariffs. He's also, as I just answered from Stephen's question, committed to tax cuts. He's also clearly committed, as evidenced by his executive orders, to unleashing the might of our energy industry, which we know will eventually drive down inflation. And